What are you saying, people? Is another episode of The Social Worker and the Mentor. Guys, like, do you know what? So I don't understand, yeah? Every single time me and Rob are here, all the time, like, we say to you, see a little button on your screen, the like, subscribe, and share button is there. So all you got to do, you see that little finger of yours? Just click, ding, just click it, right there. Just click it, yeah? But you know where to find us. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on YouTube. Rob's not here, but Rob's being long, bruv. I've told you about the Apple thing. You need to get the Apple thing up and running. He knows he's going to do it anyway, innit? So, yeah. But now, guys, thank you so much for supporting what me and Rob are doing on this podcast. You know, and if you want to be a guest, like we're having so many guests coming on, you email thesocialworkerandmentor@gmail.com. So, right, we got a nice episode here. We got two guests who are here. You know what I'm saying? Like, listen, guys, you see the excellence here? Guys, do you see how brilliant you guys are here? You lot are brilliant. Excellent. You see the excellence here? So introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Daniela.
And I'm King.
Thank you guys for coming today. Do you know what? I mean, as a social worker, I think last week or week before, it was National Care Leavers Week. And like doing this podcast, I've always had like a lot of young people or a lot of care leavers who wanted to kind of come on to speak about their experiences. And I thought it was really, really important as a social worker to get your own experiences within the care system and actually what does need to change, because I know there's a lot of deficiencies within the system. And, you know, I manage children looked after team, funny enough anyway. So I meet with a lot of young people to find out from them in terms of what we can do better as social workers. But I think I want to be able to give you guys a platform to be able to speak in terms of your own experiences, what needs to change and how we can kind of like work better. And also like for you to kind of educate social workers as well in terms of what we need to do differently. So I don't know who wants to, I'll start with King first, innit? Because I know where I met you, King. So I'm going to start with you first, innit? Let's talk about your experience.
Okay, to be honest, I wouldn't know where to start, but my relation to, the system and where social workers are concerned, I think I've had a mixed experience. And I think it's very much down to the individual that's handling you as a person. And I think my experience varies growing up. But, if I start with the positives, there are things in place for young people. And there are people who have integrity in their roles to help these young people who are vulnerable. But of course, in every system, there's flaws, and some of those flaws are as simple as, not having the right gauge on young people and what they need. And I think a lot of it is also to do with the training. So the way social workers are trained, I think it follows a very linear sort of approach that is not inclusive, and there's no equity in how young people should be treated all the time. And I think it's a little bit more about, it's not necessarily equality, it is literally equity, because we're all different as young people and our needs have different demands. So I think that's the main thing I'll point out if there is a flaw in, the care system. Yeah.
Daniel, what about yourself?
I kind of would like to echo what King has said in regards to, it depends on who you're dealing with. I was in the care system from the age around 8, and I was put in care outside of London. So at the time, it was very different in the terms of mindset, thinking, ideologies and social values in comparison to now. And what I mean by that is now social workers are trained to have trauma-informed practice, whereby before, not so much. So I think there is an improvement from when I was in care till now, but there's still little things that need to be done, such as engaging with the young people, understanding individualistic needs and kind of catering to that, and also giving the young people a voice. Because yes, we are in care, but our voices matter. We're the people that once you make the action, it affects our lives.
Do you think that's an area that as social workers we lack, that we're not like speaking up on behalf of you in those arenas? Do you think that we're not doing enough, or do you think it's a system issue that is stopping the social workers being able to do that? Because as you said, like, when a child or young person comes into care, we become the corporate parent, technically. No, not technically. We are the corporate parent. But do you think actually we're not speaking up enough for you?
Yeah, I feel like young people don't have enough advocacy, especially when they're quite young. I've met with an advocacy company that works with care leavers, and they work with young people as young as 3 years old. And it makes you think, oh, what would a 3-year-old want to advocate for? But I think it's having that person that you have a rapport with, that you're able to speak to and voice your concerns, that you know will listen to you.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing. Social workers now more so need to listen to the needs of the young people in order to help them better.
Oh, you King.
I agree, to be honest. I feel that it's a mixture of both things. It's the inability to act like human as a social worker. And there's sometimes where, you know, what you might want to do for a young person goes against your guidelines, but it's in the best interest of that young person. So I understand in that regard that, you know, social workers can be inhibited from carrying out an action that is beneficial. But at the same time, I do also think it's the other side of it is some social workers, their role is very much just a means of a career, I think. So it's something that, you know, I guess it's stable, it's, you know, it's constant, you know, it's, I think when you work for a local authority, it's difficult to lose your job, and there's all of these things that create a sense of stability for these social workers that may deter them from doing their roles correctly as well. Not that an incentive should be put in place to do your job correctly, but unfortunately, I do feel like that's the way things run sometimes. And yeah, so it's a mixture of both. It's, you know, not being able to act as you'd like to, and also just a lack of integrity for some individuals.
I want you to go in a bit deeper, man, because I feel like I feel like you got a lot more to go on, King, man. Come on, man. I want you to go deep, man. You can.
Which direction we going in?
I want you to, no, I want you to go deep, because for me this is important, because like I said, I manage the children looked after team. Do you know what I'm saying? And these are the things that I often hear from a lot of the young people in terms of their relationship that they've got with their social worker. Because obviously, if it's not, they're not with their parents, they're in care. The next person they're going to see is their social worker. But you mentioned about integrity. What does that mean? What was your experiences? Did you think that your social worker who you had wasn't integral? Was it the changes? What was it? What was it for you?
Well, I had a few social workers, to be honest. And I think an example of a social worker who I'd say lacked that integrity is someone who, you know, their communication was terrible, you know, and in order to keep a gauge on the young person who's on your caseload, you need to know exactly what's going on with them at all times. Otherwise, you can't effectively carry out your duties if you don't know what, you know, state they're in. That was part of my issue when I left care, actually. I left at 18.
Yeah.
And I think it was pretty much for the first year of me leaving, I was practically homeless. Not because I had nowhere to stay, but simply because I didn't know how to establish myself.
Right.
And I had a personal advisor at the time. But, you know, if I'm being honest, you might as well not have given them that title, because I probably spoke to them a very few times a year. You know, it took me having to complain to people above that individual to get some action, and you know, it shouldn't have to do that. You know, I shouldn't have had to go, you know, to almost a level of threatening just for someone to do their role. So eventually, you know, I was able to establish myself after about a year of leaving care. It took me about a year to move into my property, but yeah, I basically just didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to even decorate properly, to be honest with you. Like, there was a lot of life skills that I lacked even at 18. But yeah, eventually I got myself together, and then on the flip side, I then had another personal advisor who came after her.
Yeah.
I think me complaining, it shed a light on some of the people in that organization. So I was immediately transferred to another personal advisor, and yeah, she was brilliant, to be honest with you. Yeah, from that point on, I had a better sense of self and sense of direction.
Yeah.
So just to echo what, you know, we've said, I think it really is an individual basis, and I've had a mixture of experiences. So, yeah.
Daniela, you mentioned earlier about when you came into care that you were moved outside of London. What was that like for you, being moved outside London? Because obviously I think that's something that I've read a lot, that often young people are often moved away, and it's something that is true, moved away from areas in terms of what they already know, like, you know, their local connection, their family. What was that for you at a young age?
For me, it was quite hard because I was quite young, but it was even more hard because of the fact that I lived in a heavily racist area. and I and my sister was in care, but my sister's very fair in comparison to me. So I had like my foster worker say like, your mum don't love you, and she kept me in the same clothes for 4 months. It's only when I became an adult that I learned that they get paid per child per week. And I was like, oh damn. I think that was a massive culture shock. And then when I finally did come back to London under kinship care, it was almost like a sigh of relief. Like I'm around people that will understand me, or people who are the same ethnicity as me, at the very least. So yeah, it was a massive culture shock.
You mentioned about racism. What did you experience?
I experienced a lot, to be honest. A lot of name calling, a lot of the throwing stuff at the house and stuff like that. In the school, me and another girl were the only 2 coloured people in the whole school. We're both mixed race, so we're not even fully black. And even the looks that we would get, it was just horrible. And even I remember them trying to like straighten and perm my hair because my hair's not straight. And it's just, I shouldn't have to conform to be like everyone else, even though I already feel like I'm not like everyone else. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So, so talking about your experiences, do you feel as though the local authority could have made a different decision in terms of thinking about placing you elsewhere and how that would have impacted upon you in terms of your own cultural identity? Because as social workers at the moment, that's actually a very, very big thing about cultural competency. And when we're looking at young people in terms of when they're coming into the care system, about kind of making sure they can be culturally matched. Sometimes that doesn't always happen, sometimes it does. But do you think the local authority should have looked deeper into that? And did you, as you got older, did you raise that to your social worker when you had an understanding to say, I've experienced this racism, why was the decision made for me to move all the way here when there's not people who look like me?
So in the terms of the racism, I did bring it up later on in life, and it kind of came back to bite me in the arse. Sorry if I cuss.
No. This is your platform.
Thank you. But to the point where basically they did an investigation on the social worker, they found out that there was elements of racism.
From the social worker?
From the social worker, yeah.
Right.
And then because of that fault, they took us off the list. It was explained to me when I was young that you get put on a list when you're in care. And when I was 14, I was taken off, so I was no longer under the corporate parent.
No longer no care order.
Yeah, basically. And when I'd hit 18, because of that strenuous relationship, because I never really had a relationship with my mum, when I tried to go get housing similar to King, I ended up homeless.
Right.
And the statistic of homeless young people who've left care is around 9 to 10%, whereby the statistic of non-care leavers that end up homeless is 0.97%.
Yeah. Something came out recently. I saw that.
Yeah, I saw that in 2023.
2023, yeah.
Yeah, so it's why are we ending up homeless? Why is there no support put in place? But what I am seeing is that more of the young people nowadays are getting the YPAs or the YPAs that genuinely care, rather than like a YPA that's forced upon them that they'll actually only see them every 8 weeks and won't check in on them.
Yeah.
But once you're kind of been dismissed, it's hard to then go get a social worker. So for years, I was trying to get a social worker. I was trying to get advocacy, but they wouldn't help me at all. Even when I was homeless, I had to really kick a fuss about the fact that I am a care leaver for me to get housed. Otherwise, they're like,
because
no.
of your previous status.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they were just like, no. And it's like, why? Why is that?
So what would you say is your, and for both of you, is the biggest gripe that you have with the care system? Because like I said, obviously doing this platform, I get so many messages from a lot of people, ex-care leavers, those who are in care, to talk about the fact that, they've had horrible experiences within the care system from, it might be their placements, it might be their foster carers. What are the issues that affect children in care, which I kind of know, but I think from your experiences, what are the things that are the kind of like pertinent things that is ongoing that we just need to change?
Well, if I'm going to be 110%.
I want you to be 100% on. Like I'll let you land. Listen, you're flying your plane. Land when you want to land. This is your space, honestly.
Okay, so a lot of the females that I speak to, including myself, have experienced some form of sexual assault. And why is that? Why are we not checking in with our young people? Why are we not creating a safe space with them so they can express that this is what's going on? I do not feel safe in my placement. And why are we consistently being moved? I think it's the lack of stability and security, which then later on causes broken attachments and affects us psychologically. So I think working on both of those issues, for me.
King?
For me, I'd say quite similar to what you mentioned about the broken attachments. I think one of the biggest detriments in my experience was the moving, the transitions. And, you know, I went into care with two of my brothers, the ones just above me. And we eventually got separated along the way.
Yeah.
And where, you know, I was the youngest of them, I think it affected me the most because I wasn't really good at building bonds with people. You know, I had an inability even to keep eye contact with people as a child. Like, I didn't really let people touch me. And I think that came from the constant separation. And I think what that does to you mentally is you don't learn to trust, which caused a delay in my development, I feel. And I think that's the biggest detriment, is that it impacts your development. It almost stunts you. Emotional development, mental development, you're stunted because you're constantly having to readjust.
Yeah.
And these things happen, you know, I do understand that sometimes movements are necessary. You know, of course, there's some times where placements need to be changed for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But the it's the apathy when moving children around that creates, you know, the long-term damage.
Yeah.
And if we can keep, you know,
siblings together.
Exactly. In my case, I got separated from my brother because me and the one just above me used to fight all the time.
Yeah.
And we'd fight and we'd make up in 10 minutes. And that was just a constant thing. But I think it was too much energy for the foster carers. So their idea was, let's just separate them. And then we have an easier job, you know, and which, you know, I think is quite, you know, it's quite shallow when I look at it now as an adult. Yeah.
But can I ask also to both of you as well that, because you've made some brilliant points, and I think as social workers, when we kind of like go into those meetings, because obviously we have to meet with the foster carers or the placement, and because the first thing we'll try and do is have like a placement stability meeting where we'll speak to them and kind of like explain, you know, we don't want this placement to kind of break, or we want to be able to keep the children and siblings together, because we know, and I'm aware of the impact when siblings are separated within care. And as what you've just said, the point you made is correct in terms of how, you know, you don't feel that you'd be able to kind of trust anybody, if that makes sense. So do you think that when we have these conversations, like, what is it we need to be saying to the foster carers, or if social workers are going to their managers, or because remember, a lot of these decisions, they are big decisions that we have to go to a panel to, right? Yeah. So often, not that your voice isn't heard, but we would often say to our managers, look, this is what the foster carer said, this is what the young person said. What would you kind of message be to kind of senior leaders? Because obviously we're in that panel meeting, we're there, but if like you were there speaking to them, what would you kind of be saying to them about certain decisions that are made and the impact it's had on yourselves?
To be honest, I think it's a very hard thing to answer, and I think that's the whole reason why we're here, because it's not as direct as telling them what, you know, an A to Z instruction of what to do. It's a matter of adjusting an attitude, and then through adjusting that attitude, all other actions follow through. And I think the first thing is, I know it's hard to say because not everyone's got children of their own, but you know, enough people can relate to, you know, what it's like having someone that you care about, especially, you know, if they're a child still developing. And I think these people who are in these positions of power need to look at it from that perspective. How would you like your child to be like raised? What things would you avoid your child being negatively impacted from? Yeah. And by using that perspective, if you carry that into your role, it helps you make more informed decisions, right? More like emotionally intelligent decisions as well.
Yeah. I would love to piggyback off that, because I feel like, firstly, all foster carers should be trauma-informed practice. That shouldn't even be a compromise.
Oof.
I think that
gems.
I think that would help a lot with the understanding, but also, I've lost my train of thought.
It doesn't matter.
Wait, what did you say?
Oh, I just mentioned it's an adjustment of attitude.
Yes, adjusting the mindset. Oh my God, I lost my train of thought again. I'm sorry, guys.
It's calm. Don't worry. It's calm. It's fine. It's calm.
in the terms of, I got it. In terms of adjusting the mindset, like what you said, they wouldn't treat their kids like that, right?
Yeah.
But in the aspect of, for me, when you have children in living in semi-independent or even just shared homes or placements, right?
Yeah.
If they, let's say, for example, missed their curfew or broke the TV, the key worker is instructed to call the police. Now,
Yeah.
why are we setting up the young people for failure so young? Like, why are we giving them a criminal record before they've even reached the age of 18? Whereby if this was your child, you would not call the police because they broke a TV or whatever the hell it is. So I think changing that aspect there, also having the key workers have more of a one-to-one conversation. Okay, delinquency does not stem from attention, wanting attention. It stems from trauma. So why is that young person acting?
Oh, you need to say that again. You need to say that again. Say that again. Say it to the camera, man. Say that again.
Delinquency stems from trauma, guys. Remember that?
Yeah.
So why is the young person acting like that? Let's question that. Something that one of my biggest mentors said to me is turn judgment into curiosity. And I think we need to be doing that. We need to be adopting that.
Bro, are you hearing this? You hearing the facts? You hearing this? People, are you hearing this? The gems. Go on, sorry.
Shout out to my mentor.
Yeah, go on.
That's it.
Yeah, but do you know what? Because what you're saying is right, because I think, even social workers, we are now a part of our training is about trauma-informed practice. That is kind of the new buzzword, it's the new thing, because ultimately there's an origin to what's happening, and it's about trying to understand that origin and trying to see how we can remedy it and how we can support those young people. And you're right, I think what you mentioned about calling the police and mentors and support workers speaking to the young people, the sad thing about it is that I think every single young person in care's experience is different. Sometimes you've got support workers who've got it, who will have that conversation, who will do that work. Others, they've been told, okay, right, you need to go and call the police, and then they write their reports. That's the difficulty, because you can't police how people work. You can only hope that if you're coming into this line of work and you're working with young people who are in care, that there is going to be an element of where there's going to be a lot of pushback. There's going to be this, there's going to be that. But if you have a certain relationship with them where you can speak to them and say, look, all right, this thing broke. Okay, but what happened? Can we work through it? But it just depends on what you said. Depends on the social worker you get. Depends on the mentor you get. Depends on the support worker that you get. So I do agree with both of you in terms of what you said. I do want to ask you both, when you came into care, did anybody speak to you? Did a social worker speak to you to explain to you why you came into care? Because there are lots of young people where I've heard where they literally are not aware of why they came into care. Was a discussion take place with you? Go on, King.
I went into care pretty young. I literally went in on my second birthday, and I wouldn't have known at the time, but I have enough emotional memory to get the gist.
Right.
And my parents weren't capable of looking after me at the time for different reasons. But I guess I wasn't sat down and told in full exactly what's happened.
Right.
Partly, I have to be honest, I understand why I wasn't, because as an adult, I got information
that
I think would have adversely affected me at that age if I was told certain things.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate, protecting a child with what you tell them as well. But it doesn't mean that they should be completely left out of the loop.
Yeah.
When they realize that they're very different to their school peers, and which is what it was like for me. I remember having these school events like Christmas plays, and there was no one picking me up from school the same way someone else would. I'll be waiting for my foster carer, often the last child there waiting. And that's just one example of how different you are to all the other children you see.
Yeah.
So you need some kind of explanation as to why things run a bit differently with you. And it helps you ground yourself, and at least gives you a bit of understanding, so you're not looking for answers elsewhere.
Yeah.
And it comes out as, behavioural issues, for example. Yeah.
Daniela?
Yeah, that's a good point. No one sat down with me. I think with me, every time I've been put into care 3 times, and every time I'm into care, it's like I'm in the same room as the police, so I'm hearing them talk. So it's like abuse and neglect, or this or that. It's never like, oh, this is what's happening, this is why you've been put in care, this is what's going to happen next. And I wasn't as young as you, which kind of poses a question as to what age would they have that discussion with you.
Right. And do you think, and the thing is, what you're both saying, it's like life story work with young people I'll be honest with you, I think with children in care, it's something that, and I'm just being open with that, social workers, not all of us, but are not very good at in terms of sitting down with young people and having that conversation. Because as you said, there's a point where you have to protect the young person and the child. Obviously, you have to look at their age and when it's appropriate. But there's also a time where you have to sit down with them and explain, this is what's actually happened. Do you know what I mean? And obviously, it's very, very sensitive, you know, because obviously it some young people I've spoken to, you know, when I've had to sit down with them and, you know, they've asked me, Nana, why is it I've had to, you can't just do that on one visit. You've had to I've had to sit down with them and explain to them, this is the reason why, you know, they've come into care. And it's a very, very difficult conversation to have. Because ultimately, as what you said, King, you can end up bringing some sort of traumas or having that conversation. But I think as social workers, we have to provide you with that honesty so that you know. And I think, Danny, what you said, I think that's quite poor to hear from you, that nobody sat down with you, that you've got professionals all just speaking, we're talking our professional jargon, but actually no one sit down and you say, Daniel, listen, this is the reason why you've come in. Like, obviously you might be happy with it or unhappy with it, but you've never had that. How's it made you've never had that clarity?
It makes me feel like I was in the dark, almost like what King said, that I'm that kid that's just not normal. I know that they've always, like in school, they would have the meetings and stuff about me, and it's like, I know other kids don't have that, but why is that? Yeah. So it was kind of weird. It was really, really weird for me. But I was in kinship care, but my mum was also there as well. So it was kind of like, don't talk about this. You know, African household, like we don't.
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
we don't
speak.
admit none of this.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was it. Really.
And how important was your relationship, both of you, with your social workers? How important, if you're a child in care, how important is it to have a relationship with your social? Because one thing we can't get away from, social workers chop and change. Did that happen with the both of you, having different social workers at different points?
Do you want to go first?
Don't mind. Well, yeah, I think my social workers were important to me. And for, you know, both the reasons that when, you know, they actioned something correctly, that was in my best interest.
Yeah.
But when they failed to, that was obviously, that could have, you know, easily been avoided. I feel that is why they're also important to me, because them not acting has led to, you know, more damage in a way.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, with the transitions, because I had a series of social workers, that also meant that I didn't really trust the care system.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't grounded with the care system.
Yeah.
So I often said I was okay even when I wasn't. You know, as a child, you know, they'd ask, is everything all right? And I'd often say yes, just because I didn't feel like they genuinely cared about my answer.
Yeah.
And, you know, it felt very much like a tick box to me growing up. So, yeah, they are very important for, you know, what they do. But it's also important that you have a social worker and, you know, you're not getting confused about who your social worker is.
Yeah.
And that was one of my things, you know.
I think mine's a pretty different experience to yours, because, not to be rude, but I didn't really care for my social workers because they didn't try to build a rapport with me. It's like, you're being placed here, I ain't seen them again until it's time for me to move or be put back with my family.
Yeah.
So for me personally, it would have been good if I did. Now I'm of age and I work with leaving care teams and stuff. I see the importance.
What's your role? If you don't discuss it, you don't have to discuss. Yeah, don't. No. But you say you work a leaving care team, but you work a leaving care team.
I work in the leaving care teams, and that's enough.
Yeah.
So I kind of help young people transition. I help young people transition from adolescence into adulthood, because I feel like what you said, when you moved out and you didn't have the necessary life skills, it's so hard when you don't have the parent to necessarily parent you. So you're flung into the world and you're like, okay, how do I pay rent? How do I budget? How do I even apply for universal credit? And that's what you see more of with the YPAs rather than with the social workers, obviously for obvious reasons. But from what I've seen that the YPAs are a bit more involved in the terms of helping get them into that transition into life.
Yeah.
And I see the positive impact that it has on young people. Having that one person that's like, you know what, I believe in you. You're going to go get that job. You're going to go do great things in life. And last year I helped a girl get a job. She was 18. She got a 32K a year job.
Hey.
And that's life-changing.
Yeah.
Life-changing. And yeah, so I think having that one person support you. So me, when I was growing up, if my social worker was a bit more involved, I feel like I wouldn't be as, not messed up, but I wouldn't be as traumatized as I am today. Yeah.
No, but I think what you both are saying is important, and recognizing how important a social worker is for children in care. And obviously what you mentioned about somebody believing in you, about, you know, your social worker or saying to you, you know what, actually, you are going to go and do a lot of great things. Because I think you're right. Sometimes, you know, when we go and do our visits, and I'm not saying that all social workers are like this, but I'm saying that you do get social workers, the ones that I know who I manage, whereby it's like if they're young persons doing something at school or they're going to college, like the social worker will go with them to the open day, because those things are very, very important. Like there was a young person that I can think of in my team who he's a chess player. So I remember I'm not a social worker, but as the manager, I thought, you know what, I've got a good relationship with him. I went to go and see him. He played chess. We was able to speak. So having that rapport, it is very, very important. And I think what you're saying, I think for social workers, you know, for all of us and practitioners who are watching this, that the relationships that we do have with our young people, we need to kind of make sure we sustain it. Being able to say to them, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. That life story work is something that is very much missing, and we need to, you know, hear them what Daniela and what King are saying in terms of that work, because ultimately they're the ones who are seeing us on a 6 weekly basis. We can see them a lot more often, but if they're asking us to come to an event, you know, make yourselves available, you know, because they do need us as much as the system has a lot of its issues. If you can also be the good social worker to shine a light on that young person, I think what you both have said is actually very, very personal points. But I want to ask you both also, if you have any sort of advice in terms of training for social, you mentioned trauma-informed practice already. What is the training need for social workers for children in care? What do you think we can actually do better?
I think there needs to be, I think what it is, it is about the training, but I think it's also about recruitment. So the recruitment process, I think, can be challenged in the sense that I think there are ways of finding out the integrity behind a person when they're applying to a role. And I don't know what the recruitment process is like in, you know, local authorities, but I don't feel that there is enough gauge on who they're recruiting. I don't feel like their process says it does enough to suss out who's more suited for the role. And, you know, if it's incentive driven, it's a bit of a catch-22, because of course, in order to get people to apply for these roles, there has to be some form of incentive, but then that's conflicted with the people who are doing it out of genuine, you know,
because you don't know who's genuine or not.
Exactly. But I think it's a combination of improving the training, so making sure that people who are working for the system are more trauma informed, and also that people who are being recruited are in it for the best interests of young people. There needs to be a way of kind of filtering through people who put on the face of someone who cares and people who actually do. Yeah.
Daniela?
I heavily agree. I second that. I feel like we can teach and train people how to do trauma-informed practice or safeguarding GDPR, but we cannot teach or train passion. That's something that comes from the person.
Daniela, say that again. Say that again. It's true.
We cannot train or teach passion. Like, that comes from someone innately. And I feel like that comes from life experience as well.
Yeah.
So, like what you said, finding people that aren't necessarily incentive based, but people are genuinely passionate for wanting to change lives, for wanting to impact lives. That's something that helps them wake up every day. Yeah. That's the type of people that will pour more into the young people, that will actually believe in them and actually help get them long sustainable results, rather than just, I'm going to get them into a quick job, or I'm going to quickly push them here.
Yeah.
Because this is their lives that we're talking about.
Right. Guys, I want to thank you both so much for coming. But I do want something from the both of you. I want you to, in your cameras, if you've got a message to social workers, senior leaders, in terms of what your aspirations are for children in care and what you think we need to change, because this is quite a powerful episode. And I as a social worker always want to give everybody a platform to speak on their experiences, and also it's something for me to learn, to take back. And I'm hoping that social workers can use it as their CPD. So Danny, I'm going to start with you. I want you to look into your camera, and I want you to just give a message to children in care, but also to practitioners who are working with children in care.
So my message to children in care: do not feel like your voice is unheard. Please speak up, because as long as you keep shouting, someone will hear you and you will get what you need to get. In the terms of practitioners, I would say please collaborate with community leaders. Please listen to our young people. There's so many social enterprises. I've started one as well, Connecting Minds, that focus on young people, that focus on care leavers, on getting them into employment education training, but also helping them transition into adulthood. So please, let's collaborate with them, and let's focus more on the young people rather than on the actions or KPIs.
Oof. King, you got to take that one, bruv.
All right. Yeah. I'll do my best. But my message to the young people who are still in the system or recently left is I feel that we have the best stories in the world. You know, it's very hard to go through what we go through and, you know, have to change environments so often, have to deal with so many different people and, you know, experience the amount of trauma and abuse possibly whilst you're in the system. But the way human nature is that we can't help but grow and heal and learn from our experience. That's not in your control. You will learn and you will grow and you will heal, and realize that with your story, you've now got capabilities that a lot of people don't have. Ooh. You've got resilience that a lot of people don't have. You've got an adaptability that a lot of people don't have. So just realize, you know, there is a light side to this. And yeah, it does get better eventually. In saying that, use all your resources too. They are there. This is where I'm going to kind of lean over to social workers now and people who work for the, like, you know, corporate bodies. They need to be able to broadcast these opportunities more, because I do feel that there are opportunities there, but they're not broadcasted enough. A lot of young people don't know that there's support there. So it's not just establishing the support, it's making sure the support is accessible. And
excellent. That's
my message to both the care leavers and the people in care and the social workers. So
I can't top that at all, man. Guys, I can't top that. That's the end of the episode. That's it. So you know where to find myself and Rob. Actually, wait, before I even get to that, where can people find you, both of you? Daniela, where can they find you? Because you were like, I do something. Now, where can they find you? No, come on, plug yourself.
Okay, guys. So follow me on Instagram. It's Princess ISSS Princess, but also follow Connecting Minds LDN on Instagram.
King, where can I find you?
You can find me on Instagram. That's at King Soul. That's King and then XOUL. Yeah, you'll find me there.
So guys, you know where to find them. But honestly, thank you so much. Very powerful episode. But guys, you know where to find myself and Rob. You like, subscribe, and you share. We'll see you soon.